The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with my co-host Tony Palmeri, and we're going to be talking still about election stuff on this particular show. Of course, we've got the primary behind us as you're viewing this show, and we have a general election coming up on Tuesday, April 5th. In that election, besides candidates for City Council and Mayor of Oshkosh and County Executive, there is one race for Branch 2 in Winnebago County, and we are very pleased to be welcomed in this half of the show by the incumbent in that particular race, the Honorable Scott Woldt. Thank you very much for being here, Scott. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we want to talk a little bit about your candidacy during this half hour, but you know, you've been a practicing attorney in the area, certainly for a very long time, having worked with George Curtis and his firm, mostly handling, I think, private type things like workers' comp and personal injury cases.
Correct. I did a little bit of criminal defense also and real estate work also.
And then you were appointed last year by Governor Doyle to take over when Judge Haase retired.
Correct.
You know, a lot of people may not know anything else about you, if anything, so why don't you tell folks a little bit about who Scott Woldt is?
All right. Born and raised in Oshkosh. My father worked for the Sheriff's Department for 20 years, retired. My mother worked for the school system. After high school, went to University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, graduated, and then went to Hamline University, St. Paul, Minnesota. Got married a couple years after that. Wife Lynn, have two daughters, Sarah and Hillary. Practiced in Green Bay for a year or two, but every weekend I came back here. This has always been my home, always will be. I was at a deposition one day and George Curtis said, "Do you want to come home?" And I said yes, so I came home. Been here ever since.
And you took over, I know it's not quite a year yet, but when did you actually, when was your first day on the bench?
Actually, it's been over a year, been on the bench.
Is it really? Wow, where does that time go?
Since January of '04.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Judge, why don't we get the negative stuff out of the way quickly. When you did get appointed, the Oshkosh Northwestern had an article called "Appointment Follows Donations," where it was stated that you and your supporters combined contributed $13,000 to Jim Doyle for governor, and then you got the appointment. The implication being that maybe there was a connection. What do you say to that?
I don't know who my supporters are that donated that, but
Well, Mr. Curtis, George
Okay.
Curtis.
I don't know how much he gave because that's his private stuff. It can't come from a law office. It has to all be private donations. I know that I gave somewhere in the area of $1,800, but I gave that for 2.5 years prior to that appointment. I didn't know Judge Haase was going to retire. In fact, the way I found out is one of the attorneys in our office was on a scheduling conference and came into my office and said, "I just heard that Judge Haase announced his retirement today." I didn't know he was retiring. I just gave money to Governor Doyle because I believed in him. I supported him when he ran for Attorney General. I supported him when he ran for governor.
But there were 12 people who applied to get the appointment, and my understanding is that the two finalists were you and Mr. Birmingham, and you were the only two that had given any money to the Doyle campaign. Don't you think that at least provides an appearance?
Well, you can put any spin on it you want.
Right.
And that's the whole purpose of spin doctors, to put spins on things. But I can just tell you about what the process was like.
Sure.
The process is when you apply, and then there are 10 people on the Governor's Judicial Selection Committee. That's a bipartisan committee. It's 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. So
Right.
you have both sides. You have business, you have district attorneys, you have everything on there. That's totally separate from the governor's office. You go through and they review all of the applications. They cut the number down to around 5 or 6, depending on how many apply.
Right.
They did that, and they interviewed, I think, 6 people in this case. What they did then after the interviews is they sent 2 names to the governor. Those people don't know anything about donations. They sent the 2 people over. It just happened to be that the 2 best candidates are the ones that gave money. In my opinion, people who are politically active typically give money. I'm politically active, always have been. I'm not the kind of person that sits around, and when I believe in something, I support it, just like right now. I believe that something has to be done about the laws with respect to alcohol, that we have to
We'll talk
put
about
drunk
that.
drivers on probation. I'm not sitting around. I'm taking the action.
All right, why don't we talk about that? You apparently would, what I've read, would like to take a Winnebago County drug course in a direction that hasn't been taken in Wisconsin, and it says that you'll need a change in state law to do it. What are you trying to do actually with the drug court?
Well, with the drug court itself, it's basically social work from the bench. Right now, and we're in the process of developing this, we're trying with social services now to get a director to start doing this process. The way, just for a little background, how I got involved with this, Sheriff Mike Brooks called me up and said, I've seen you in court, I like what you do. Scott, I know you care about these people. We need to do something. Will you come with me to Hastings, Minnesota and La Crosse, Wisconsin and go through their drug court and their alcohol court with me to see what they do to try to bring something here? I said, yeah, I think we need to do it because 90% of the people that come in front of me, drugs and alcohol. And that's not criminal, that's everything. So I did it, I went with him. Bill Lennon, the district attorney, went along. We have the chairman of the county board, a couple people from the county board, the director of human services, the sheriff, deputy sheriff, someone from corrections, Terry Boudreau, who is mental health, because 1 out of 4 people incarcerated typically have mental health problems. So we all went out, took a day of our time. I took vacation then, went out to Hastings, Minnesota, went through their program, went to La Crosse, went through their program. And what we want to do here, because they're doing it separately, we want to do it all in one because we have this problem with both of those things. It's horrendous. We're just starting to start those programs, and in fact, we're so innovative. Even I've had people call from Florida that have seen this in USA Today, the article that we're doing, setting this up. So we're in the process now of setting up this drug court and the alcohol court. What we do is once they're placed into that program, every week, those people are brought back to court. So I'm going to do it with Judge Barbara Key. Her and I are working together to go through the training to do this. Every week to 2 weeks, and it gets longer as the process goes out. We do them out, and actually we have a graduation at the end. We have an alumni association at the end where these people can continue to come back and meet with others. And we bring them in, we keep on top of them, make sure they're not drinking. We make them go daily and do urine tests. We make them go into different sheriff's departments, different police offices and blow, take breath tests.
Wow.
We make them day report. We make them go to treatment. People are saying, well, is this a soft on crime stuff? I can tell you it's not, because this program we're going to put people in now is more strict than anyone that's out
Well,
there.
it's what I read. It said currently jail sentences and fines are the only sentencing options that judges have for those arrested on second or third driving offenses. What would you say to people who would say, well, it should be that way? These people should have jail sentences thrown at them rather than the drug court program.
Well, I agree. Part of the legislation which I drafted and sent to Senator Rossler, who is now getting it formally drafted to bring it to the floor, part of that legislation is that the minimum mandatory sentences double. But they're not mandatory anymore if you go through this court.
Okay.
If you go through and get the treatment and successfully complete it, you will not have the minimum mandatory sentence. So now, second time offense, the minimum mandatory is 5 days. I can guarantee you, because this program will be so difficult, if it's only 5 days, those people are going to say, Judge, I don't want the probation. Give me the 5 days. I'll take the 5 days.
Right.
Because it's going to be tough. We're going to be on top of them, and we're going to make them stop drinking, make them stop taking the drugs.
You know, you mentioned sentencing, and certainly that's all about what judges do. How do you feel about truth in sentencing? Because, you know, there's the jury is out on this, no pun intended. I mean, some say it's a joke, and others say it's a good thing and long overdue. How do you feel about it?
good points and bad points. The thing I like about truth in sentencing is when I say what someone's getting for jail, I say their initial confinement is 5 years, it's 5 years. It's not a day less. I know that for a fact. And I think that's good for victims because victims know that then. They know what to expect. Now, part of the problem with that is we have some sentencing guidelines that are based upon what the old law is, not what the new law is, and the guidelines for that aren't up to date. Now, the Judicial Commission is in the process of updating those now, but they're not updated yet. And the truth in sentencing is 1999. We're 6 years into it, and that's still not done. I think we need to move forward a little bit on that.
Well, okay, so you sentence someone to 5 years in prison. Does that 5 years, that does not include extended supervision then, correct? Or can it?
It's called a bifurcated sentence. What we do is when I sentence someone, I'll say 5 years. You have 3 years of initial confinement, 2 years of extended supervision.
Okay.
What I don't like about the truth in sentencing part and extended supervision, from my perspective, if I give someone 2 years extended supervision and they mess up during that time period, I want them going for the 2 years. But they come back to me, and then I have to assess whether or not how much of that I want to do it. I don't believe in that. I believe we should have a hammer over these people that they understand, okay, you had all this treatment in prison. You had all these chances. You mess up again, you're going for 2 years. You got to sit the rest of it.
When Judge Haase was retiring, we had him on the show, and I asked him this, and I'd kind of like to get your thoughts on this too, Your Honor, because to my way of thinking, and I cover, as you know, a lot of stuff in the courts, I don't see the difference between extended supervision and parole or probation. I can't quite understand the difference, and he really didn't think that there was much of a difference.
There isn't.
It's just a different way of, it's just a different name for it.
The only
apparently.
difference, parole, someone's making a decision whether or not you get out. Now we don't have that decision, we just have that date.
Okay.
So when we have that date, you're out and you're basically on probation.
Judge, as a result of the actions of former DA Paulus, confidence in justice in this county has been severely shaken. What have you done as a judge, or what can you do as a judge to help restore that confidence? Or do you think in your judgment, has it already been restored?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Weekly, I get people bringing it up. We were talking a little bit, I'll have people who aren't happy with a sentence I've given. Think I'm too harsh on something. They'll send in letters that will say, or call up the court and say, we want Judge Woldt to understand we think he was too harsh on that case and that we're registered voters. That's someone trying to affect what I do on the bench.
Right.
And I think people think because someone was for sale before, they can affect my decisions based upon the vote. And I'm here to tell you, that's not going to work. I'm not going to do that. So I see that every day. I see people bringing up Joe's name. As you know, I have cases, Price and Pease.
Right.
I deal with those cases. I'm dealing with cases all the time that come up. But what have I done? As we were talking earlier about these judicial ride-alongs, what I do is I allow people to come up, sit on the bench with me. I'll have court. They can sit up on the bench, watch what I'm doing. I firmly believe that if we have people like you and you sitting in my court, watching what's going on, this stuff doesn't happen. If it's out in the open, stuff cannot happen. People say, well, what about the press? Well, the press is what makes us honest. If we don't have the press here, these type of deals get done in a back room, and that's not fair. That's not the way it should do. So I'm open about everything I do. Everyone's welcome in my court. I welcome everyone there. That's why I invited you guys to come sit on the bench with me. I think if we do those things, we'll start to restore confidence in what happens in court. We know things don't happen in the back room.
Right. You mentioned Price and Pease. These two guys are in jail claiming that Joe Paulus did all kinds of dirty things to get them behind bars. Did you take their case and send it somewhere else?
No.
It is in your court.
The newspaper continually states that there is something pending in Price case. There is nothing. That case is closed. There is nothing.
The Price case is closed.
There's nothing pending in that file. The case is closed. Pease just filed a 974.06 motion for...
Which is what?
Which is-
It's basically what he's doing is claiming that he's being held against his constitutional rights, or
Okay.
state of Wisconsin constitutional rights in violation of the law, and he filed that motion.
Okay.
So we have a hearing date. I can't remember the date, but that's coming up.
Should, in your judgment, Bill Lennon, the district attorney, announced recently he was going to investigate some of the abuses in the Paulus era because he claimed that the state was moving too slow. Do you think that the AG's office should be looking into these cases, or should it be done down in Madison?
It's something I can't talk about.
You can't talk about that.
As we discussed before,
Right.
there's certain cases that I may or may not be involved in that
All right.
I can't talk about.
All
That's
right.
one of those
Fair,
cases.
Fair enough.
You had mentioned the county board earlier, and certainly the county board, and this would be within their purview. Courthouse security has been bandied about for quite some time, and it's kind of been on a back burner for a little while, but I think it's probably lying in the recesses of some folks' minds. And judges have typically weighed in on courthouse security and what they think about it. As a judge, what are your thoughts on our current level of security in Winnebago County? Do we need to step it up, or is it just fine?
I'm smiling because my first day on the bench, sitting on my chair, and I look underneath my table and I see a button. I'm thinking, great.
And it's not to
I
order
have a
lunch,
button.
is it?
It's for the jury room to tell the jury to come up. That's my security. So I have absolutely no security whatsoever. I have bulletproof glass or bulletproof material in front of the bench, but I'm sitting from waist high above it. So really, I have no security whatsoever. From my perspective, I firmly believe that if someone wants to get me, they can get me because I'm the first car in the parking lot in the morning and I'm the last one to leave. So all you have to do is look for that last car and it's me. So if someone wants to get me, they're going to get me. If I have a security concern, I can call the court officer and he comes. I've never had any problems in my courtroom. I'm not really that concerned about it. If I have a security issue, the DA will let me know. I can do something about it. So from my perspective, I don't see it a problem. When I got on the bench, I said one thing I'm going to do is treat people with respect. If you treat people with respect, they're calm in court. I've had people where I've given them the maximum sentence. And I've had their families come up to me after court and thank me. It's how you treat people. If you treat them with respect, they can accept their sentence. It's when you don't treat people with respect from the bench that people start getting irritated, and those situations can happen. So I haven't had any problems.
Do you think, that having been said, do you think that it might be a wise decision to at least put the magnetometer or the metal detector back in, just to keep out, certainly not things like nail clippers, like was an issue raised with someone, but to keep out things like knives or guns?
I would like to see at the front or the back door of the courthouse where the parking lot is, if they could extend that out to make a receiving area, maybe 15 by 15 receiving area, where everyone that comes in, have the court officer sit there, walk through a metal detector, kind of like what Outagamie County does. You walk in the door, you walk through the metal detector, they have someone sitting right there. That's the only, that would be very helpful. I don't think it would be a real big expense for the county, but I think that would be something that would be helpful.
Okay.
Now, you were a defense attorney for how many years?
17.
Okay. Now, what would you say to people who would say, Scott Woldt, going onto the bench, 17 years as a defense attorney, he's got a built-in bias against prosecution? How would you answer that?
I answer that by looking at the people who support me. I've got over 100 attorneys that are supporting me, 90% of the district attorney's office, 90% of the public defender's office. I have attorneys from both sides backing me. I have law enforcement backing me. The sheriff backs me, the chief deputy backs me, I have a couple chiefs of police that back me, law enforcement backs me.
Why?
Because they see what I do from the bench. I've heard from many people, including judges. All 3 retired judges back me. The reason they come up to me and say they like the way I run my court. I have the clerk of courts, they're backing me too. People like the way I'm running my court. I'm fair, I'm prepared. As I said, I'm the first one there in the morning, last one to leave. Everybody sees that. They joke about it.
Now you've never run for office before. You were
Never.
appointed to this. How are you going to campaign for this office? How much money are you going to spend?
I have no idea. I have no idea how much money I'm going to spend. I might just put a group of people together that were people I trust, people I know, trust their opinions, and I even have some probation agents on there. I have people from the business community, people who have been in politics before that can help me, and I trust what they're doing. I have people from the Sheriff's Department on my campaign committee. I'm following their advice. As far as spending money, the Supreme Court just recently made new rules for judges' elections.
Okay, what is that?
Rules are with respect to funding judicial campaigns. I had to, which I did actually, I started this before the new rules came out because I didn't want to know what people were giving. So what I did in my committee, I set my own separate funding committee up. They do all my fundraising. I don't have any part of that. They do it all. They send out everything, they do everything, I don't do it. When money comes in, it goes right to treasurer, I don't know. When they do their treasurer report to the people on committee, I don't know. I don't know if someone gave me anything or what they gave me, and that's what the new Supreme Court rule is. So it's different with judges. That's the only campaign where the candidate can't know what the money is or can't raise the money, so I don't.
And I think that's a good rule change.
I do too.
But do you think it would be healthier if we just had public financing of judicial elections? I mean, wouldn't that just eliminate any suspicion at all that someone is trying to buy a judge?
You know, the only way you can take out, because even with that, you know, if someone says, I'll support you, someone lends you their name for the support, you could get that in there too. The only way that you can take that totally out of there is do what the federal courts do and do nothing but appointments, and then there's no elections. I don't believe in that. I believe the people of Winnebago County should select their judges. I don't believe it should be an appointment.
Right.
I don't think it should be a life thing. There has to be some accountability there.
Okay.
Other than you know, some of the things that we've already talked about, the alcohol and the drugs and so forth, because those are problems with defendants primarily. Certainly, the sentencing thing is a problem too. What other problems, you know, inherent or otherwise, do you see that are really glaring within our legal system right now?
With people coming into court, I said the 90% figure. 90% of those people, because I keep track of these things, they're not high school diploma. They don't have a high school diploma. So I tell people, when you come to court, if you want to come back, sit in that chair again, don't get a high school diploma, do drugs or alcohol. I say it to the kids. Big problem, which I see is changing now with our system, is we're starting to change this. We're thinking we just want to incarcerate these people. Instead of rehabilitating them, we're just incarcerating them. So let's face it, in Winnebago County we have 4 prisons, 2 jails. All of these people that are in jail in this county are getting out. Someday they're getting out. So do you want someone, when they get out, and the percentages are they stay in this county, do you want someone that has gone to crime college, graduated with a bachelor's degree in predatory arts, or do you want someone who has been rehabilitated and has become a good neighbor? Because these people are going to stay here. We have to do something about it. So I see that we're starting that change, and I think that's why this change of the law, which I'm proposing, is getting such rave reviews. And it's, as I said, throughout the United States, people are talking about this. I think that's very helpful. And I think if we can make that change, I'll give you an example. Minnesota, they've done this. They've had a 17% decrease in recidivism. If we can keep 20 people, just 20 people, out of prison for 1 year, that's a savings of $2.2 million. It's huge. We were talking about operating after revocation, because that's all I can do now. On a second or third time offense, I can suspend their driver or revoke their driver's license. Right now, I get around 50 of those cases, the DA charges, a week. Do the math on that. 50 times 52 weeks out of the year. They usually get 5 days in jail, and that's at $41 a day, bare bones minimum. That's $1.5 million it's costing us to incarcerate these people that aren't getting the treatment they need. They don't care. I get 7th operating after revocation, 8th, 9th. They don't care. Just because you take away their driver's license, they're not going to stop.
So I think it's exceptional. I really do. But so where do we go about finding the money to fund some of these programs? I mean, the state and the feds keep cutting, and those cuts are getting deeper and deeper. How do we convince, our government that we need these funds to do these programs?
Number one, it's buying in, right? That's why we got the people we did on this committee. That's why we have the chairman of the county board, judiciary committee, buildings. That's why we have those people on our committee. Right now, with Minnesota, they have 80% of the people that are in their programs pay for it themselves, either through self-funding or they have insurance. The other 20% of it, they get typically through government grants, federal grants. I know Milwaukee County, they haven't used their federal grant, but they have a $450,000 grant waiting for them for the drug court. They just haven't used it.
You've worked on both sides of the bench, as we've talked about. Any surprises that you've encountered in the last year?
Yeah, it's amazing some of the arguments people make.
For why they're in front of you?
Yeah, my judicial assistant calls them pen pals. I'll send them to jail, and they'll be in jail for 2 months, and they'll say, "Judge, I've learned my lesson. Please let me out. I want you to know I haven't drank anything or smoked anything for 2 months." They've been in jail for 2 months. No wonder. So I'll get those all the time. So that kind of surprises me. I'm surprised at the amount of mail I get from prison. The way it works with all the prisons we have here, if they want to appeal anything, they do prisoner inmate litigation, they'll file all their cases. So we have all those cases here. So we have approximately 4,500 people in prison here in Winnebago County. So all those cases from other counties, they follow them here.
Judge, the war on drugs has featured many judicial abuses, I would say, or legal abuses. In Winnebago County, we've seen the MEG unit, Metropolitan Enforcement Group, been accused of doing some pretty nasty things. Do you think it's time to investigate a MEG unit? I mean, does it serve a role?
Well, I think if we didn't have the MEG unit, you wouldn't believe the amount of drugs that were out there.
So the MEG unit works?
Oh yeah. You said to me, anything that surprised me, I thought I knew how prevalent drugs and alcohol were in our society before I got on the bench. I didn't know. That's why I'm doing this now. That's why I'm taking these actions. That's why I'm trying to start this drug court. That's why I'm trying to get the law changed with the alcohol, because it's out there.
But when we hear about cases of, police knocking down doors and it's the wrong home and things like that, we shouldn't tolerate that kind of thing.
Oh, I agree. But the question is, do people make mistakes? Yeah, everybody makes mistakes. I see people in court every day. Everybody makes mistakes. Everyone can do it once. Right. Does something happen where the police make a mistake? Yes. Should they be held accountable just like everybody else, just like me, just like you? Without a doubt. People say, other judges talk about the Court of Appeals. I sleep well at night because of the Court of Appeals. I know if I make a mistake, the Court of Appeals is going to correct it. I get another chance to correct it then. Okay. I get to do it right the second time. I sleep good because of that. The MEG unit's going to make mistakes. Everybody does.
Right.
We're just about out of time, Judge. Why don't you look right ahead into camera 3 and tell folks why they should vote for you for Branch 2 Circuit Court Judge on Tuesday, April 5th.
Well, as I said, I'm a man of action in court. I say to people, I think I'm from Missouri because, from my perspective, don't tell me, show me you're going to do something. Since I've been on the bench, I've been very active. First thing I did when I got on the bench is I went to the Christine Ann Center, went to the Sheriff's Department, went to Social Services, went through probation and parole, toured the jail. I wanted to see where I was sending these people. The only way I could be a good judge is to do those things. When I went to all those places, the people said, "Judge, why are you coming here? No judge has done this before." And that shocked me. I thought to be a good judge, I have to be active in the community, I have to be proactive, I have to know where I'm sending these people, know what I'm doing. That's why I'm the first car in the parking lot in the morning, the last one to leave at night. That's why you should vote for me. I'm going to do everything I can to protect citizens of Winnebago County and do everything I can to be the best judge I can.
All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Tony and I will do an abbreviated version of Another Viewpoint. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a real
pleasure. It was fun.
food.
Run across a border.
I couldn't practice my religion.
I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in Cambodia, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. You speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there.
For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here. I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want.
Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here along with Tony Palmeri. We just had a really, I think, a real interesting conversation with one of the candidates for Circuit Court Branch 2 here in Winnebago County, Judge Scott Woldt. Of course, he is the incumbent, but, you know, this is his first election he's actually running because he'd been appointed last year. You know, for someone who's only been on the bench just a year, he's really, I think he's digging himself in and just, you know, he's getting down to the heart of what needs to be done with the justice system.
Well, what did you feel about his answer to the question about the campaign donations and his appointment?
Well,
he wants people to believe, and I want to believe, that there's no connection between the contributions and him getting the appointment. But the fact remains, out of the 12 people who applied, it was the 2 contributors who were finalists.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I want to believe that too, Tony.
So do I. And he strikes me as a person of great integrity.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the appearance, I could see how some people would be concerned with it.
Were there, and I can't remember that list of candidates running for or seeking that appointment, were there any others from Winnebago County or Oshkosh?
I think I can't mention their names. I don't remember their names, I should say, but I think there were several.
Because I was going to say, well, maybe it had something to do with the fact that they were local. But if that's true, what you're telling me, then I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
I don't know what kind of campaign his opponent, Scott's opponent, is. Dan Bissett.
Dan Bissett, the current court commissioner.
Right. Now I don't know what kind of campaign he will run, but wouldn't you think he'd bring that up?
I would almost bet that he will. I mean, I don't know Dan that well, and we'll be taping a show with him, just so folks know. We'll be taping a show with him on the 17th of this month.
Right.
So that may be something that we'll want to talk to him about.
One thing about judge elections is they're very frustrating because the judge candidates really can't talk about cases.
Right.
Because they may decide on them. So how do you decide who to vote for judge? I mean, Judge Woldt now has a record. We've seen what he's done. But what do you really decide on?
I don't know what the general public does. For myself, I see these judges in action because I'm sitting in court fairly frequently. It used to be a lot more than what it is these days, but I've seen most of these guys in action, and but I've also seen Dan Bissett. In the intake process within his courtroom. He handles a lot of small claim stuff, and I think probably some family type stuff. I'm impressed with both of them, what I see. But that's how I, base my decision as a voter as to what I see these guys doing. Right. If I think that they're really weak on crime, or if I think they're, too tough, if there is such a thing. And, everything that I've heard about Scott and the few things that I have seen from Judge Woldt, it's
Now
been impressive.
we have had some nasty judge campaigns in this county.
They've been downright ugly.
Right. I guess the best example or the worst example, depending on your point of view, would be the last Judge Carver race. Was that Carver against Jorgensen?
Against John Jorgensen.
Yeah, that got very, very nasty.
It was ugly. And I think the ugliest one before that would have been
Gritton and Slattery?
And
well, Gritton and Carver was nasty.
that was ugly, yeah.
and-
But Frank Slattery, when he went against, when they were running against each other, that was ugly too. And I don't know why it gets so ugly.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be cynical about it, but the judge, if you're in law enforcement, judge positions are fairly well paying compared to attorney, not all attorney positions, but many attorney positions. I think these guys want these jobs. They're more prestigious, I would think. What do you think about this one? Do you think this one will get nasty? I don't know Dan. I've never met Dan Bissett. You've met him.
Yeah, he's done a few speaking engagements that I attended and things like that, and I have seen his courtroom stuff. I can't imagine that it's going to get downright ugly. I mean, I think to get ugly, you've got to have some kind of a skeleton in the closet somewhere, and I don't know that, because that's always historically what we've seen is they drag the skeletons out of the closet, and we've not. I don't know what kind of skeletons these guys have in their closet, if any, but I've not heard of any.
The other thing we talked about with Judge Woldt, or one of the other things, and I was very impressed with his answer, was the issue of whether confidence in the justice system has been restored in Winnebago County. And I was impressed by the fact that he said no, it hasn't, because I don't think it has at all. My guess is it's going to take many years to restore the confidence, don't you think?
Many years, if ever, Tony, if ever. I mean, you take a district attorney who was in office as long as Joe Paulus was, and you hear the rumblings and you sort of just dismiss them. But when you keep hearing them over and over and over again, and you've got this extremely powerful man who everyone just fears. I mean, you should fear a DA, but not with the fear that these people felt. I mean, everybody feared this man.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden things start coming to fruition. And look what we have. And I think we're going to see a lot more coming out about Joe Paulus. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. That's my own personal opinion, but that's what I think.
It has been extremely disappointing from my vantage point at how slow the Attorney General, Peg Lautenschlager, has been moving on this.
And I don't understand why she's moving so slow.
I don't get it
She
either.
is a bitter enemy of Joe Paulus's. I mean, there's no love lost between Peg Lautenschlager and Joe Paulus.
Right.
And so why isn't she moving faster? And I'm disappointed in her, frankly, because when she was running, she said that she was going to get to the bottom of this matter. That was one of her promises to the electorate. And she hasn't, I don't feel, done that.
And then Bill Lennon announced he was going to start looking into it. And I guess Mike Balskis, who's an assistant DA, is looking into it. And for some reason, the local newspaper is urging the county DA not to look into this. Almost lambasted Lennon for this and accused Balskis.
I think they did.
They did, yeah. And accused Balskis, I think, of being a headline-grabbing assistant DA.
I don't remember what the words were, but basically
going on
saying that
there?
there's a conflict of interest. That's the suggestion
Is that the argument?
that I see. I think that is, that he should just let the state do this, and and because there was, and I don't know. I mean, Mike Balskis came from Outagamie County. He was in the DA's office up there. A lot of them just sort of did a switch. I mean, a lot of Outagamie counties came down here. There was some kind of a little grudge I heard between Balskis and Paulus, and so I think the Northwestern has an axe to grind with the fact that Mike has been sort of appointed to oversee this.
See, the way I look at it is this, Cheryl. I'm speaking now just as a citizen of this county. I cannot believe that Mitch Shearland, who was Paulus's right-hand man, I can't believe Mitch Shearland was the only corrupt attorney in all of this.
I don't think that he was.
As a citizen, I want to know who are the corrupt attorneys. If there were any corrupt police in this, I want to know who they are. We've got to clean out the dirt in this system.
Yes.
And to think that it was just Joe Paulus and Mitch Shearland.
No way.
No way. Now, if Peg Lautenschlager is not moving on this, then I applaud Lennon for moving.
Yes.
Because with every day that passes on this, these corrupt lawyers, assuming that they're out there, are still operating.
Sure.
And I'm not privy to any of the documents, but I got to believe some of this stuff shouldn't be too difficult to find.
Well, no, I can't imagine that it would, and I think bit by bit we're going to start seeing things coming out.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I really do. It would not surprise me any if we do have some innocent people in prison. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And the one that comes to mind is the John Maloney case.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah, why don't you tell our viewers, what was that case about?
John Maloney was with the Green Bay Police Department. I don't know how long his tenure was, but he was a highly recognized officer with them, and I believe his expertise was arson investigations. And I can't swear to that, but I think that was the case. Going through a divorce with his wife, and one evening she turned up dead in a fire. That's the sum and substance of it. He was tried, convicted, and has been in prison now for, I don't even know how many years, 3, 4, maybe even
much
5.
longer than that, yeah.
I don't know. I've kind of lost track of it, but it's he has maintained his innocence from day one. I have personally spoken with Mike Balskas, and I don't think, because he was telling me some things off the record. So as a reporter, I don't think I shouldn't say anything more than that, but I can tell you that I think that there are some things that were covered up in that particular case.
Isn't part of this story that Maloney's attorney originally was Gerald Boyle?
Yes.
And there's always been a rumor that Boyle and Paulus were somehow in cahoots.
Well, they ended up being
book and
partners, for God's sake.
Book and movie contracts out of this?
Yeah, Hollywood Joe is what they call Joe
Right.
Paulus.
Now Boyle contends that he gave John Maloney the best possible defense, and we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But now, knowing what we now know about Mr. Paulus, it just... Of course, Jerry Boyle's back in Oshkosh. As we do the show, we've got a murder trial going on. Gary Hurt,
yes,
who was allegedly murdered Glenn Kopitsky, and as we do this show, they are in court. And Boyle has come up with this, is it a homosexual rage defense?
I don't know what the deal is. I
Apparently,
haven't heard
okay,
it.
the argument is that Boyle is making is that Hurt had a sexual encounter with Kopitsky, and murdering Kopitsky was his getting rid of this anger or frustration he feels at being a homosexual. Is that the gist of what they're arguing?
I don't know.
And that alcohol consumption reinforces the rage he feels.
Well, I don't know, because I've kind of been out of touch with that case for a couple of days, and I know that that's when all this has come out. But, you can make convenient arguments about anything. And so if there was any kind of a little pattern of homosexuality there, why not, if you're trying to do a defense, why not just throw it all out there? And it's kind of the old thing, you throw everything against the wall and you see what sticks.
Right.
And
well, they're essentially trying to argue that he was insane, right? This is part of the insanity plea.
Well, I don't know. If you're insane, do you think that lucidly? Do you plan things out? I don't know. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes out. But and interesting thing about that case is Paulus was the original attorney on that case until he got charged and convicted. So you see, no matter which direction you go, you can't get rid of the Paulus factor.
Again, as we speak, they're in the middle of the trial. By the time people see this, the trial may be over. But I have to say, so far, from what I've been reading in the paper, I've been impressed with Lennon's office in this. It hasn't been headline grabbing.
No, it has not.
They're trying. Joe Paulus would have turned this into an extravaganza. And this case has elements of it that are Hollywood-like, right? Wasn't Gary Hurt is it Gary?
Yeah.
Wasn't he a honor student?
He was.
Right? Model young person, and it's got Hollywood elements to it.
Sure,
so an ambitious DA, if he wanted to, could easily milk this for all it's
Maybe
worth.
Joe is writing a book on it even as we speak from his prison cell. We don't know. He's probably writing a book of some kind. But, yes, he would have milked this for everything. And I don't know. I'm sure Court TV would have been contacted to be covering this case.
What's your theory about how a guy like Joe Paulus fools so many people for so many years? I mean, he had me fooled. I'd see him in the community a lot, and he always struck me as a very distinguished, articulate guy who was. I mean, I thought he was kind of like full of bravado and an egomaniac,
full of himself.
Yeah, but you kind of expect that from people in powerful positions. But I really never would have imagined that all of this was going on. How does a guy manage to fool people like that for so long?
Well, he's a very good actor.
Yeah.
Maybe Hollywood truly is his calling. I mean, we joke about this, but maybe, he obviously fooled everybody, as you said.
He sure did.
And that includes...
Including a lot of people in the press.
Yes. And I just thought that he was just this feared district attorney who everybody walked on eggshells around. And I thought that he was very tough. And truthfully, I felt a little safer on his watch. And so I was duped too. I mean, when you have someone who is, coming out as being very hard on crime all the time, you do as a citizen and a taxpayer feel like you're safe.
Right.
But he was a predator of his own kind.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm telling you, Tony, we are going to find out much more about this man, I believe, before this is all said and done.
Oh, I got to believe that you're...
And I think
right.
other people are going to be taken down in the process.
Right. And, I really despise the word closure because it's overused now. But we do need some closure on this.
But I don't think we're going to see it for a very long time.
No, we're not. And that's why I'm really shocked at how slow Peg Lautenschlager's office has moved on this.
Well, and why? We haven't been able to get any kind of a definitive answer as to why it's taking so long. But I'll tell you, I think there's going to be a lot of ripple effects, not just with people who are going to be exposed as being corrupt and being in this whole mix. Not necessarily in the bribery, but I think we're going to see some other things coming out. But the ripple effect, I think, is also going to affect, like I said before, people who are unjustly imprisoned.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, think about the consequences that could have. If someone has spent even a day in prison where they shouldn't have been, and it's because someone has, altered evidence or just completely not brought certain exculpatory evidence forward, whatever. However they've been able to do it, if they have been able to convict someone by doing things that they shouldn't have done and not giving someone a fair trial, then we've got people in prison who would have grounds for some kind of, I would think, lawsuit against, well, it could be against the county, I suppose, but also against the state, because as the district attorney, it's a state office, so he's appointed by the state. I mean, the consequences, the fallout from this is incalculable.
Let me bring a partisan angle into this. Joe Paulus was a Republican, active in the Republican Party.
Not initially, though.
Not initially. But there was a period in the mid to late 90s where I think he fancied himself as a kind of kingmaker. Anybody remember?
Yeah.
He went out of his way to get behind certain candidates. And his candidates would win.
Yes.
Very frequently.
Yeah.
How has the Republican Party in Winnebago County managed to shield itself from all this?
Well, some of my friends who are attorneys, they're not necessarily members of the Republican Party because they're kind of disgusted with the party, as I think we both are, disgusted with both of the parties in this county.
I am.
But the Winnebago County Bar Association is trying to figure out how to start restoring some of the confidence, and they're trying to come up with some ways that they can rebuild and restore the public's confidence in things, and in attorneys overall. How the Republican Party, I mean, if I were in that Republican Party, I mean, Mitch Sherlin too, he was a high-ranking person in that Republican Party, yes. Yeah. I mean, he was as high as you can go, and here he is, he's now driving an 18-wheeler, from what I understand, and can never practice law again.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, Cheryl, is I don't want to think that this even could be true, but is it possible that some of this foot-dragging is partisan? That there could be high-level people of, say, the Republican Party. I mean, Vince Biskupic has been implicated in some of these things, especially the fund deal. Remember when he ran against Lautenschlager? That came up. You know, you don't want to think that there's anyone that's saying, let's keep this hush-hush so as to protect either the Republican or Democratic parties or whatever. But you have to ask those questions.
Sure.
And again, the longer this goes on, the more questions like that get raised.
Well, and you know, you mentioned Vince Biskupic. Now, he used to be the district attorney in Outagamie County. Chose not to seek re-election there because he was running against Lautenschlager for
Right.
attorney general. He lost, but you know, his brother is a U.S. attorney.
Right, Steve.
And you know, I mean, could it go as high as that or even beyond? I mean, we don't know. But I wish that we would get the ball rolling and start finding out some of these answers.
Let's talk about one national law and order issue. Have you been following the battle over President Bush's Attorney General nominee, Alberto Gonzales?
Not a whole lot, no.
He was the one who was essentially advising the administration not to pay attention to the Geneva Convention, protections of prisoners as we fight the so-called war on terror. And he probably will get nominated or get past the Senate, but the Democrats are bashing him heavily. I mean, do you think if someone was shown to have supporting torture, does that disqualify him from being Attorney General?
Well, I think it should.
You think it should?
I absolutely think it should. I mean, if you're supporting that, then how can you be supportive and standing up for someone's basic civil rights? I mean, there's a contradiction
he
there.
has disowned memos that say this, and in open hearings he denounced torture, and we want to believe that he's honest. But don't you think that the president should have a right to pick whoever he wants, even if it's someone?
No.
You don't?
No, I think it has to go through a process. Because I think if you single-handedly pick people, then you run the risk of having corruption.
Well, no, but what I'm getting at is absent. I mean, no one has said that he's corrupt. No one has said that he has done anything illegal. Apparently, it's many people disagree with maybe his viewpoint. Do you think it's fair for the U.S. Senate to turn someone down based on a disagreement over viewpoint?
No, that I don't. But, you know, going back to the original question, I think to just have a president or anyone single-handedly handpick people for positions, no, that we can't
I mean,
have
Senator
that.
Feingold kind of surprises me on this because he was the one who 4 years ago gave this eloquent statement about why he had to vote for John Ashcroft. Feingold was the deciding vote that gave us John Ashcroft. 4 years later, Russ Feingold now is voting against Al Gonzalez.
It makes you wonder a little bit, doesn't it?
I don't see that Gonzalez and Ashcroft are all that different. So what really changed?
Yeah.
Maybe Feingold at some level is admitting he made a mistake with Ashcroft.
He could be. Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, what about this, do you want to introduce a different topic?
Oh, no, go ahead,
Okay.
go ahead.
What about this DPI race? Speaking about partisan politics, all right, I was in that race. I was one of 4 candidates for the 54th Assembly District, and Representative Greg Underheim impassioned pleas that he wanted to come back for his 8th or 9th term.
Yep.
No sooner does he win the election that he announces that he's running for DPI,
Yeah.
which is a nonpartisan seat, and yet the Democrats and Republicans have made it partisan, essentially.
Yes.
It's the Democrat,
Yeah.
Libby Burmaster, against the Republican, Greg Underheim. There's 2 other candidates who probably don't have a shot. Underheim and Burmaster are probably going to spend a ton of money. Isn't this disgusting?
Well, it is disgusting.
I'm sitting in
yes.
Melanie Bleckel's chair, so it's not just disgusting, it's crap, and it just...
She'd have much harsher words
I'm
than
sure
that.
she would.
It is disgusting, and you know, I think a couple of things. Number one,
By the way, even if I had not run against Greg, I would say it's disgusting.
yes, I would too. I agree, but you know, it's a slap in the face to every single person who voted for him.
Oh,
And I think it's a slap in the face even to those people who didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for him, but it's a slap in all of our faces too, even if we voted for someone else, because he's sitting there saying he wants to be our state representative in the legislature.
Yeah.
And he was given that position by a certain segment of our district here, and now he wants to bail and go somewhere else. And I don't think he's got a hope in hell of getting that position. He's run for it once before, and what did he get? Something like 20%?
well, but that was when Linda Cross was in the
Yeah.
race. And see, I think he'll make it through the primary. And then
He probably will.
Yeah, then it will be Burmaster versus Underheim, and I think it's going to be a very ugly, nasty race. Less because of Burmaster and Underheim, I think the nastiness is going to come from the two major political parties.
Sure. Well, I mean,
And that's unfortunate. It goes to show you how broken our system is in Madison.
we need to just get, and we'll never see it. We'll never see it. But I would love nothing more than to see the parties just done away with. It causes nothing but problems.
Well, I don't know if I would necessarily support that, but we certainly need reform of the system. In fact, people who are watching this show should go to thefightingbob.com website and look at the People's Legislature idea. I mean, there are people from all over the state that are just disgusted. And when it's reached the point where a nonpartisan position, that if you think about it, the DPI superintendent is really the only children's advocate in the state. That's really what that position is. The idea that these major parties are going to run this crash and burn, nasty campaign, and issues of concern to children and their families get lost, I think that's really horrendous. Because Greg has already said that this is really going to be about whether the DPI is controlled by the teachers union.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what has that got to do with defending kids?
Well, nothing. But Greg is oftentimes, I think, not on topic.
Well, do you think he really wanted to run for this, or is this the old boys down in Madison that said, Greg, we need a good candidate against Libby Burmaster?
Well, I think that may be a part of it, but I also think, I mean, if you look at this last election, you know, between yourself and the other candidates who were running against him, he did not get the popular vote.
Less than 50%.
And correct. And you know, in the online polls that were conducted, he did horribly. I think that maybe he realizes that his time may be running out. You know, the clock for his lifetime career as a politician, at least in this position, maybe he's starting to see the handwriting on the wall. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what goes on in Mr. Underheim's mind. But I just, when I first heard the news, I thought, what?
Well, you know, everybody has a right to run for office.
Yes.
More power to him. But it really came as a shock after a race when you've got 3 other candidates who want to be in the assembly or were willing to do the service for the assembly. Then when the guy who won almost immediately comes out and says, but I want to be in a different seat.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit very well.
No, it doesn't. And every single one of his supporters should be outraged by that. Because you're right, you can run for any office, that's the beauty of America, but not after you've said, you know, you're the friend of the taxpayer and by God you want this and give me another shot. And then as soon as you get that other shot, you say, just kidding, folks, I'm really not that interested in it. I aspire to something greater. So, well, we're just about out of time. Scott Woldt is seeking re-election. We'll have his challenger on in a future show, and that election, of course, coming up on Tuesday, April 5th. So, well, this was fun.
Yes.
You're not Melanie, but it was fun anyway.
People should go to eyeonoshkosh.com, TonyPalmeri.com, and OshkoshNews.org for great coverage of all of these
all the races. Yep. Thanks for joining us. For Tony Palmeri, I'm Cheryl Hentz. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
Bye.